Realistically, we were always going to come across a bad Children of the Corn movie eventually. I'm just amazed it took this long. Hi guys, so before we get into it, a quick disclaimer that there will be spoilers today. I don't care if you know what happens in this movie, and also you'll find all my other reviews for Stephen King adaptations in my Stephen King playlist. Not that the great man himself had much to do with Children of the Corn 6, or Children of the Corn 666, as it's known, which is quite a clever title, I suppose. I actually speculated on X the other night that maybe this film was written, directed, and edited by the devil himself, although I can only confirm 100% who directed it, which would be Kari Skogland, if I've got that name right. You might remember her from such films as The Size of Watermelons and Chicks with Sticks. Her vision for this film is to tie it in with the original, which was made 15 years before this one. But it's a little bit jarring for me at this point, the idea of a genuine follow-on to a previous Children of the Corn movie, because I've gotten so used to all these films just being their own thing that all of a sudden you're coming along and giving us a proper sequel. It's like, ooh, not sure I want that. So to give you an idea of the plot, we've got this young woman called Hannah who is driving back into Gatlin, Nebraska as a 20-something. Turns out she was raised in the town to a certain point, and now she wants to discover more about where she came from, her origins. She wants to reconnect with her mother, if possible. The trouble is, there are lots of shady people in the town who have their own sordid histories with what went on in Gatlin back in the day, and there are a bunch of new kids on the block who are potentially going to turn out murderous if certain conditions allow. And there's also Isaac, the original child leader from the original. He's back, same actor as well. Turns out that he's been in a coma while all those other sequels were happening, and now he's awake. Bullshit. So Isaac is able to awake in this film because by returning to Gatlin, Hannah is fulfilling the prophecy. There's some kind of prophecy, and Hannah is fulfilling it just by arriving back in town. And this means that Isaac can now awake and start organising a brand new army and go on another killing spree, I suppose. No, it's not a great plot, and instantly I was totally on the back foot with it, to be honest. How do you even make something become a prophecy? Like, I'd really like to become a multi-millionaire, but how could I go about doing that in such a way that it was guaranteed to happen because it's a prophecy, it's been preordained, it's been foretold, it's in the tea leaves, it's guaranteed to happen. Even if I sit in my bedroom all day and just look at the wall, I'm still going to become a multi-millionaire because it's prophecy, it's been written, there's no changing it, you know. What I suspect is actually the case is that there's no such thing as a prophecy and that it's just a lazy writing technique that people use. How are we going to explain that Isaac is coming out of his coma only now in time for this 6th movie where we just happen to have the original actor back? We could just make it like a prophecy that he wakes up when we want him to. Ah, yes, good thinking. Isaac is the absolute bane of this film, by the way. I could not stand him in every single frame that he appears in. The film acts like it's a massive deal to have him back. It acts like Isaac is one of the great horror villains and we should all feel lucky to have him returning. But this is a guy who... he was only in one previous Children of the Corn film, and it was a long time ago. So to suddenly have the same actor playing the same character when he's almost 40, what could he possibly contribute at this point? This is not a Laurie Strode or a Sidney Prescott, you know, people who, when they're absent from a franchise for a significant period of time and then they come back, it's like a massive deal and everyone's excited. I can't imagine that at the end of the 90s, people were stood next to each other at the water cooler at work saying how cool it is that Isaac's going to be coming back for the next Children of the Corn. I just can't envisage that people were having those types of conversations. But this movie acts like it's the coolest thing ever that we're getting Isaac back. His name is in the title. His face is on the movie poster. Not the actual final girl who is the star of the movie. No, Isaac. And the first time we see him in this, he's in a coma and he hasn't woken up yet, and you get a vibe like like it's the start of Halloween 4 when Michael Myers is in his coma and there's rain and lightning outside and the security guards talking him up, and you get goose flesh almost. But it's fine for that film because Myers is like this big giant of horror. You can go a bit over the top, you can be dramatic, you can big up the return a little bit. But when it comes to Isaac, that irritating little shit from Children of the Corn 1, I don't care about him coming back as a 40-year-old, but this movie really, really feeds on that. But the character just weighs the movie down like an anchor. He's the same guy. He's not developed at all in terms of his personality. When he wakes up, he's still just as evil. He's still spouting that biblical bullshit that's probably not even in the Bible. And he wants to create a child army to start sacrificing people to he who walks behind the rose. He's the same. It's just he looks 15 or 20 years older, and he's somehow become even more irritating. And he gets his hat back from the original film. So in one scene in this, he's not wearing the hat, and then the next scene he somehow has it. Now, this does happen in other horror franchises, especially Friday the 13th. Like, he always seemed to get his hockey mask back at the start of every film very easily. Oh, there's a couple on a boat driving along and they resurrect Jason from the bottom of the seabed. Of course, they're just going to happen to have his mask dangling off the wheel of the boat. That's not the biggest deal in this film. Okay, he's got the hat, fine. Maybe he dropped it off at the hospital when he went into his coma and now he's picking it up again on his way out. But as a character, he's just so annoying in this movie. And it feels like the entire movie has been built around him, and that's just a big mistake in my eyes. It would be remiss of me not to mention the person who is meant to be the star of this, i.e. Natalie Ramsey, who plays Hannah, a genuinely good actress appearing in a bad movie. I have to wonder, actually, whether she was aware when she was making this as to just how bad it was going to turn out to be. This woman retired from acting in 2009, sadly, although I guess if you're not making enough money from the industry, then eventually you've got a decision to make. But looking at her filmography, I see that she once did Cruel Intentions 3, and I actually remember her being in that because, shock horror, I've actually seen Cruel Intentions 3, the whole movie. Don't look at me like that. We've all got skeletons in our closet. I've got mine. I'm sure you've got yours. But there are other, even more famous actors in Children of the Corn 666. So Stacey Keach is in it. I think he's playing a doctor. I will always love him solely for Road Games, which he did with Jamie Lee Curtis. And Nancy Allen's in the film. She plays the mother character. Now, Allen is probably mostly famous for RoboCop, but during this film, I found myself thinking more about Carrie, which she was in back in the 70s, because Carrie's a horror film, Children of the Corn is a horror film. And it just made me think, imagine starting your career with something like Carrie, that absolute classic, and then eventually you end up being in this. When Alan did this, she was probably getting on towards like 50 maybe, or certainly a mid-40s, but it just shows how down her career had gone, because there's just nothing for her to work with in this movie. She plays the most bland character you could imagine, and I don't even think she gets a death scene. It's really slim pickings for her. There's just no engrossing storyline in this at all. There's way too many death portents, especially early on. So at one point, Hannah's driving along and she picks up a priest from the side of the road who's got car trouble. And then he sort of gabs on from the passenger seat a little bit and then just vanishes. And she doesn't think that's like a big deal. Like, for most people, they'd freak out, maybe turn around and go home. But no, it's fine. She's just going to carry on and pretend like it didn't really happen. But once she gets to town, there's not that much tension in the film because everybody knows who Hannah is because of the prophecy. So it never really feels like a real town, Gatlin, this time. And as the movie goes on, Hannah kind of wanders around with very little purpose, and we get scenes where Isaac's just posturing in front of his minions, and then eventually all worlds collide, and Isaac's doing some kind of ritual in the corn where he's going to sacrifice people to he who walks behind the rose. Been there, seen it, got the t-shirt. He's now a character who is willing to like split somebody right down the middle. This is just not who he was in the first movie. He's never been like a cleaver of skulls like Jason Voorhees or so. Like, come on. Like, he used to get like Malachi and other kids to do his dirty work. This is just not who he is. And there's this other character who's quite the regular throughout the film, and then suddenly he just commits suicide when none of the other characters are around by just falling on a sky. It's like, have I missed something? Why is he doing this? There's another character who turns out to be a bit of a secondary villain, but he's got the power to like fly up into the air. There was a horror film that came out a few years ago about a kid who had the same sort of powers as Superman. He could fly around. I never actually saw the movie, but I saw the trailer. I just can't remember what it was called. But this guy in this film, he's got the same powers, and at one point he's just hovering in the air, like being all cocky about the fact that, you know, he's so strong, nothing can touch him. But how did we get to a character like this? It's not superheroes of the corn. What is going on? There's also a sex scene at one point, because I guess the plot's going nowhere, so why not? But it's not a proper sex scene because the camera's right up against the characters' faces, so you're not actually seeing the bodies. Plus, they're doing it in a weird area of a barn where I think the sprinkler system's gone wrong or something. So while they're doing it, there's like water cascading onto them, and clearly the director thinks this is really sexy because they're doing it in a really wet environment. But actually, all I'm thinking is that these two characters don't actually like each other that much. They're just doing it because they've both had a really bad day, so why not have sex? Like, this whole movie is just bad. There's so little to enjoy. There's not much in the way of kills. There's one electrocution halfway through, and then a couple more kills towards the end, I think. There's nothing in the way of scares or atmosphere. Absolutely forget it, and I'm just glad that it's over and I don't have to watch it again. It's not put me off watching the others. I'll try those, but certainly this is a huge dent in my Children of the Corn franchise confidence, because I did not enjoy this at all. It's time to go to the Bag of Terror and find out what sort of score I'm going to give Children of the Corn 666 Isaac's Return. But you know what? I'm actually not going to use the Bag of Terror today. Why should I for a movie like this? So instead of the Bag of Terror, I'm going to use the Bag of just abject boredom. So let's see what we've got in the Bag of abject boredom. 1 Michael Myers carving knife out of 5. This is by far the worst score in this series, and I think no more should be said about this film. Right, before we go, shall we have a little reading update? I think we should. So I just finished reading a couple more Aliens novels. These two are collected in the Aliens Omnibus Volume 4 edition, shown here. The first of the two is probably the best. It's called Music of the Spears. So this is set in a futuristic New York where this guy is trying to make music from an alien's screams and the various noises that it makes. So he's got this recording studio with all this equipment, and he breeds an alien in captivity just beyond this wall. And every time it makes noises, he's recording it, and he wants to create a masterpiece that's full of different alien noises. And he tries to make the alien make new more noises by feeding it victims, and it's a bit sick and utterly ludicrous, the idea that a guy would try and make music from an alien. But I kind of enjoyed the book. It's all right. I'd give it like 2.5 out of 5. It doesn't end particularly well, and I certainly wouldn't call it a classic, but it was all right. It was readable. The other book in this collection is called Berserker, and this one takes place in space. So we've got this mercenary group who are trying to reclaim an abandoned space station from the aliens. So they go in there. There's like 5 or 6 of them, and they've got this like RoboCop type person with them who... He's got this specialised suit. He can fire guns. He's like Kane from RoboCop 2. Totally formidable. He can just like blast apart anything that moves. This thing can just like shoot hundreds of aliens by itself and not get hit. But the problem is this book is just way too action-packed. Like my mind was numbed from the amount of aliens that get killed in this one book. It's like some kind of action-heavy video game in the form of a novel, and I was just kind of tired of it by the end, so not a great one. I'd give Berserker 2 out of 5. So on the whole, not the best omnibus, in all honesty, but there we go. Right, we'll leave it there for today. Thank you for joining me primarily for my Children of the Corn 666 review, and I will catch you all again next time. Bye-bye.